Just Like Us, for LGBT young people.
Ciao, Sarah. What's up?
Hey, James.
She's giving me a look because she's disappointed with
Well, James has
the way
been-
I decided to start that.
James has been trying out his Italian accent on me. And
It's
I'm not...
how you say very bad.
Yeah, it's how
It's
you
really
say
bad.
Eastern European.
I have to do it for a
But-
play soon, and
yeah.
it's not going to be good. Well, we're talking about LGBT issues in schools, and this is relevant. Why, Sarah?
Basically, in a primary school in Birmingham called Parkfield Community School, they recently had to suspend their No Outsiders program, which basically is a program that uses storybooks to teach about same-sex couples to kids, and doing it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
But hundreds of parents reportedly withdrew their children from the class amid weekly protests, and it's gotten a bit out of hand. And this has raised this question of whether it's okay to teach young people about LGBT issues or what the benefits are.
And Question Time as well. There was a big furore because Question Time had that question they posed to people that said, is it morally right that 5-year-old children learn about LGBT issues in school?
I think they had to go back to the drawing board on that one. But
it's not Fiona's best.
Yeah, I think so we're just kind of talking about what we would have liked to see in schools and our experiences of LGBT issues being taught in schools, which won't take long because they weren't taught in my school. And just kind of the impact of that going forward, I think, and what we'd like to see.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
So, LGBT issues in schools. So, you mentioned just a minute ago, were you taught anything?
I don't
at all.
Definitely not taught anything. I think it was maybe mentioned. I probably brought it up. No, we. I think we had a lot of topics. We had some debate type classes where it was kind of things would be brought up, and then there'd be a time where someone who you knew was straight would bring up LGBT people, and you kind of hold your breath a bit and kind of be like, "Oh, is this gonna be good or bad?" And then,
definitely.
But definitely nothing really from teachers, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think I had. I mean, people were aware of the things. I think I ended up having a few conversations with people who were like, so what's this trans business? And I was like, okay, we'll take a minute to go over that. But honestly, I think closeted LGBT people end up doing more LGBT education that is very stressful for them to do than the actual teachers are giving pupils.
And I think
in most schools
it's a lot of emotional labour, which is another word something gets banned in that.
But
it is true. It is
it's so stressful.
It's a lot of stress to kind of have to debate your own existence, or prove, almost validate your own existence to people who are
without letting on that it's your own existence.
Oh, that's
it's I think gay people are great, but I have no particular personal agenda.
Yeah, I would be I, an LGBT supporter. It would be that was one of the things when I came out. I would be like, Mum, how didn't you know? I was debating this for ages. She'd be like, you just like to debate things. But
to be fair. So what would you have liked to have had?
I think
that's a long sentence.
I mean,
what would you have had that you would have been happy about it, and you would have said yes, good?
I like how you reworded that and then made it longer and worse than the original. But I loved it.
What would you have?
What did I want to hear?
What did you want to hear when you were at school?
I think it was mostly just anything. I think I was kind of that's the weirdest part, is that when you grow up not hearing anything about it in schools, it sends this very strange message of this isn't a thing that's appropriate to be spoken about, which I think then adds to this idea of shame and you feeling you can't share who you are. So I think just the idea of it being spoken about in any way and being this is the thing that happens and it's okay to feel this way, or for families to exist in this way. Because part of the program is about teaching very people in primary school. So I think having that from such a young age would have really set the kind of groundwork of this is okay. And I think it's also important to notice that this doesn't mean they're going to go straight in with any kind of LGBT sex education in primary schools or anything. I feel like people get a bit carried away sometimes, because at primary school level it's just going to be talking about the different types of families that you can have. So people can have 2 mums or 2 dads or 2 parents, and same-sex families just as a thing that existed. That would have blown 7-year-old me's mind to know that was sure. Even I think that's the thing, is realizing how little it is that LGBT people are asking for. Kind of just any kind of representation for me would have been massive and like very impactful, and just seeing LGBT people in a positive light, I think people would have just realised that LGBT people weren't just there as like the butt of jokes. I think would have been the major impact.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
You had a point earlier as well that we were going to go over about Section 28, which I thought was a good point.
Let's see if I
Please
can remember
elaborate.
this point.
If you don't, I will remember it for you.
So as we know, like Section 28 was about banning the promotion of homosexuality in schools. And
Which basically just meant they couldn't talk about it at all. They couldn't say it existed.
And I think when that was then like abolished, there was never anything that was brought in place that was kind of, we have to talk about these things, which would have then counteracted it. It was kind of just the issues kind of almost faded into the background. Schools could get away with still being very homophobic and choosing not to bring it up or like educate their children on it, which I think has then like left these kind of this impact of kind of this idea that it's a taboo thing to talk about when it's really definitely not. And I mean, think
there's so many schools who will have exactly the same policies on it now as they did under Section 28.
Definitely.
Except the difference is that before those policies were enforced by law, and now those policies are the things schools are choosing to do.
Yeah, because those policies haven't been like kind of outlawed in any way. They haven't been banned in any way. They've just been like abolished.
You don't have
like,
to have those.
Yeah, it's kind of, you don't have to have them, but I don't know. It's a strange one.
But it means effectively for a lot of schools, it's exactly the same as living under Section 28 in terms of what kids are learning. There is hope because there is now legislation going through about having to provide relationships education. Everything we've talked about applies to not only, it's often thought of as an issue exclusively with regards to sex education, which is obviously very important, and there is a lack of LGBT sex education, but it's just as important, you know, relationships education, talking about these types of relationships as allowed and as things that exist.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
So you're about to hear a really great audio montage. We love a montage.
We love a montage.
And it's to do with the #NoOutsidersMatters campaign, which has recently been started by JLU, and it's kind of almost to combat this row about the No Outsiders campaign in Birmingham, and kind of just providing some LGBT voices on the issue. So just people saying what it would have meant to them to have LGBT education in schools, and kind of just how ridiculous they find it that people are against it.
Here's a few quotes from some of JLU's ambassadors and workers about that.
As an LGBT plus person from a religious background, it hurts me deeply to see religion being used as a way to justify the exclusion of others. We are better than this.
I didn't see LGBT plus people in schools. It made me feel like gay people didn't lead normal lives. This still holds me back sometimes.
To LGBT young people, you are wonderful and valid. There's nothing wrong with you, and soon our education system will teach that. There are a lot of people fighting for you.
I became a more productive and thoughtful contributor to society when my school began to recognize my LGBT plus identity.
At school, it felt impossible to create a long-term picture of my life. Inclusive LGBT plus lessons promote familiarity for those who are feeling alone.
LGBT education wouldn't have changed how I identify, but it would have prevented a toxic environment in which people regarded homosexuality as wrong.
Maybe there would be more of us if we were taught to love and accept ourselves, because maybe then less young lives would be lost.
I come from Vietnam, a country in which there's no available LGBT education. It is the silence that left me in fear of myself.
Being LGBT+ and identifying with anything you feel happy with doesn't harm anyone. We need to uplift everyone with whatever makes them happy. Be kind.
I grew up with severe anxiety and depression because nobody taught me it was okay to be LGBT+. Today's kids deserve better than that.
LGBT+ education would not have made me gay. I always was. It would have only made me and my classmates more empathetic human beings.
LGBT relationship education would have created a school community where I would have felt able to be myself. I want young people to have the positive experience I never got.
I'm in the LGBT plus Muslim community. This public rejection hurts and embarrasses me, but it doesn't change me.
Educating about LGBT plus identities early on can give LGBT plus kids a chance to grow up feeling normal, included and understood. Take it from us.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
So, on an optimistic note, yay for LGBT educations in schools.
Yeah.
Yay for more of it going forward.
Yeah, and hopefully there'll be more of this, like, that will have, like, positive impacts in the future and kind of the way that we look at LGBT
and hopefully
LGBT education.
More productive discussions about these sorts of things rather than the question time style.
We really hate that question time question.
We really do. Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah, so...
signing off.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.
We'll get back down to it next month.
Yay.
See ya. Bye.
You've been listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people. The music was by Twisterium. We come into schools too. Young people, teachers and parents can find us at www.justlikeus.org.